Alright guys, welcome back to F1 News, and this was Formula 1 at its very best. Put these new regulation cars on a great circuit like Silverstone with 3 different cars fighting for the victory today. Just unbelievable drama, battles all over the track, the best race I've seen in years, to be honest. I like it. Well, thankfully the drivers in the instant at the start were okay as well, but arguably the biggest story outside of Stint winning his first Grand Prix in 150 attempts was Mercedes actually competing for the victory this time. Hamilton, the first time so far this year he led a Grand Prix, the first time he seemed to be in with the sniff of actually winning a Grand Prix. Definitely exciting stuff for Mercedes going forward, the potential of what it means for the championship, and the other rivals seem to believe that Mercedes are back in business, but Hamilton does reckon a few more tweaks are going to be needed if they want to get back on quite level terms. Very much intrigued your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always. Some really cold shots here because this first lap was ridiculous. There was, I'm sure you guys have seen the incident maybe from Gasly's POV, when he tries to find a gap that Latifi made off the start. Latifi actually got a monster start between, I'm pretty sure it was Zhou Guanyu in the car that you can now see upside down, and George Russell. Latifi just bombs it down the middle. You can even see in this shot in the background the other incident that was going on, because I'm pretty sure Vettel ended up dive bombing someone and Albon got hit, and then like Tsunoda was hit as well. Like, it was absolute chaos, right? But the major incident was Gasly kind of ends up having to back out because Russell pulls out, which, I mean, Russell can't really not pull out, because if he doesn't pull out to the left there, he's not going to make the corner, so he kind of has to. Probably a racing incident, I would say, but in the end it means that Zhou gets kind of clipped his right rear tyre, and then he gets flipped upside down and he goes flying off into the barriers, right? And he goes over the barrier and hits this very importantly placed fence, because this one wasn't air, he was going into the crowd. And I mean, yeah, look at this shot, right? Like, you can actually see him still inside the car. Unbelievable. Like, without the halo, this might have been a very different story today, but thankfully after several minutes he's able to get out of the car, and I think he was stretchered away, goes to the hospital. Turns out he's pretty much perfectly fine. So just incredible the fact that these crashes will happen, like something of this severity, and he's absolutely fine, walks away with pretty much no injuries, probably a few injuries, but he was back in the paddock by the end of the race, right? So that's just absolutely fantastic to see. And like, we can even see here George Russell, right, at this point, I think they were kind of saying, could he got the car back to the pits to actually like effectively restart the race and get back on the grid, because they restarted from the initial positions. We'll discuss that here in a second. But George Russell, I'm pretty sure, trying to start the car wasn't really going to happen, so he went over to Zhou, and Albon as well, of course, was also involved in this incident and ends up also being taken to hospital. I believe he's okay as well, but Zhou, of course, was the kind of, well, potentially the bigger casualty. I mean, look at this angle as well of this car just flying out in the background, and off the start, as you can already see, Verstappen got the lead, Sainz was in second, and Hamilton got a monster start, took Leclerc and Perez into turn 1, and actually, well, found himself in third position, right? But in classic Hamilton fashion so far this season, the luck doesn't really work out in his favour. So, well, thankfully, Zhou and Albon, they go to the medical centre, they're okay, both conscious, both okay, it turns out. And honestly, if anything, a good thing maybe that there was this kind of red flag that came out immediately, right, before they even got completed the first sector here, because there were some plonker demonstrators coming out onto the track here to try and, I don't even know what they were going to try and do, get hit by a car or something, to try and make a statement. Not really sure what the plan was there, but they tried to come out, eventually get escorted off the track. But like, if it hadn't been red flagged, like, you know, they could have been in serious danger that they were trying to put themselves in, right? So I guess even thankfully, if anything, the red flag came out, because it meant that the cars weren't going as quick as they could have been when this incident could have potentially occurred. So I suppose it was almost a blessing in disguise in a way, of course, with the drivers being safe. But the key point was that because the cars hadn't passed the safety car number 2 line before the red flag, and therefore the last confirmed order is the original grid. So despite Hamilton's great start, like, he gets put back into 5th on the grid, and actually has a poorer start next time around, gets done by Norris. That holds him back a little bit, but certainly made up for it as the race progressed. And of course, the very pleasing confirmation that Zhou Guanyu was all okay, and even tweets this out, right, I'm okay, all clear, Halo save you today, thanks everyone for the kind messages. Already got 300,000 likes, I guess we'll make that one more. It's like, yeah, great to see he's okay. Like, unfortunate again, seems for Zhou, because he did such a good job in quali, and then again doesn't even get a chance to compete for, well, any points in the race. So tough scenes, but you know, still remarkable. And the best news of the day, that he's all well and good. The restart order then, exactly the order effectively that they started the race in, puts Hamilton in. I'm sure Hamilton was pretty frustrated given the great start he had first time round, and Sainz eventually got a second chance to fend off Verstappen, which he absolutely does. And Verstappen, a few laps into the race, picks up a pretty serious issue with his car. Pretty sure he runs over some debris, scrapes up the kind of underfloor of the car, reduces the amount of downforce they're able to generate from the ground effect, and then all of a sudden he's losing places, right? Sainz gets him, Leclerc gets him, and Verstappen was battling way back in the field with, I mean, at the end he was just about holding off the Haas of Mick Schumacher to pick up 7th place, but it could have been much worse actually for Verstappen on the day. So like, he gets an issue, I think he has a puncture, he has to pit because of it, and then of course the damage of the car didn't help him through the rest of the race, right? And Perez also, after the second restart, had an awful lot of damage as well after a clash with Leclerc. It was crazy. There was 4 cars pretty much wide going into turn 3, and Leclerc kind of, well, eyed an opportunity down into turn 4, doesn't happen for him. Perez kind of cuts him off, front wing damage for Perez, has to get that one replaced, and Leclerc even picked him a bit of front wing damage, which he maintained to the rest of the race and still was banging in the laps towards the end here. But this was a remarkable situation because with George Russell out of the race, Hamilton was there, the lone Mercedes that could do something in this race, and he'd been on an absolute monster stint on these mediums. I thought, honestly, he could have got even longer, right? If they'd have sent him to lap 40, they would have got lucky with the safety car if they had to pin him for softs, and he would have come out in front. But, I mean, look, regardless of this situation, he was putting in, like, monster lap times. He was closing in on the Ferraris because they were battling out front, and Hamilton was actually closing in on them, right? So, very impressive, not only performance from him, but also just to show that this Mercedes, like, from relatively early on, about this point in the race when the Ferraris came into pits, it was clear that the W13 on Silverstone with Hamilton behind the wheel had the potential to actually win the race, which is pretty much the first time we've seen that so far this year, that there was even a chance, really, that a Mercedes can actually walk home with a victory. And of course, it would have been crazy at the home Grand Prix. And he was just banging in fastest lap after fastest lap and at it, you know, monster pace on those mediums, right? So incredibly impressive stint, but also just shows that the improvements from the Mercedes, especially in terms of race pace again, were working, and they were very close indeed to the Ferraris and the Red Bulls. Hamilton does reckon there is still more to come if they want to compete on a consistent basis, especially at tracks that suit them a little bit less. But this was the first time that we've really seen Hamilton even lead a Grand Prix, or of course being with a chance of actually winning it. And he may well have done if it hadn't been for the way the safety car situation panned out towards the end. He also gets a slow stop here. It's kind of frustrated about that one on lap 34. Pits for the hards, of course, would have had those hard tyres pretty fresh all the way to the end of the race, and probably would have certainly had the pace, I think, to get Sainz towards the ends. But it will, of course, the safety car comes out, and then that will definitely put a spanner in the works, because with 12 laps to go, or so 10 laps, once the restart was going to happen here, with Ocon for some reason coming to a stop here on Copse, he could have gone elsewhere, I suppose, and maybe not caused the safety car in the same way. But it was a pretty obvious call from what I thought the Ferrari guys, and certainly Mercedes, to okay, pit Hamilton, get him on the soft to the end of the race. And Perez benefits massively here because he was 25 seconds back, like he was putting a good shift, right? But after his early issues, like he was way back, and then the safety car brings him right back into contention on the new soft tyres. And well, we know how incredibly quick the Red Bull can be down the straight and in those type of situations. So anyway, Leclerc stays out. We'll talk about Leclerc in a later video because I want to dive into that Ferrari situation in more detail, the exact decision they decided to make. But they let Leclerc stay out on the hards. Sainz and Hamilton come in, and Leclerc was effectively a sitting duck. He put up a good fight in fairness, but like on those hard tyres, there wasn't really much he could achieve against the guys behind on softs. And these final laps of the race were just absolutely ridiculous, right? Since that, after that restart happened, there was just battles all over the track. Like every single corner, it seemed like something was going on. Leclerc, Perez, Hamilton, like there was an incredible situation on the final chicane where Perez was kind of defending against Leclerc, or like he'd made the move. He then leaves the track and pushes Leclerc off. Hamilton swoops up the inside to take third. I think it was second place actually at the time, but then Perez just has too much speed down the straight, gets him again into turn 3, and then of course by pushing Hamilton off the track there, Leclerc gets the position back and Hamilton has to fight with him for a couple more laps. It was just absolutely incredible racing, and well, as Formula 1 very nicely points out right here. But at the end of the day, Perez, they did investigate him a bit for that move. In the end, they kind of say, okay, whatever, it's okay, let's just let it run. But out front, it was Carlos Sainz winning at the first Grand Prix of his career, the 40th ever driver to win a Formula 1 Grand Prix. Incredible stuff from him. Like the consistency certainly paid off here, but arguably Leclerc probably should have won if not for some interesting strategic calls from the Ferrari side of the paddock, I suppose. And Lewis Hamilton, what a great drive from him, P3. I think on another day he probably could have won this entire thing. He was closing up. He was only a couple of seconds behind Sainz on the hard tyres, much newer hard tyres, when the safety car was called. I think he would have got Sainz within a few laps. Then who knows what happened with Leclerc at the ends. If his tyres fell off the curve a little bit, Hamilton's able to come through. Who knows what would have happened, right? But I feel like without the safety car, there could have certainly been a P2 for Hamilton, if not a P1. Who knows what would have happened. Before we talk Hamilton's reaction, just wanted to give credit to Haas, right? The first time Mick Schumacher's got points in Formula 1, I thought that he was going to try and dive down the inside of Verstappen towards the end. Verstappen was doing some very, let's just say, aggressive defending at the end of the race to keep the Haas of Mick Schumacher behind. And I thought that he was going to try something here, Mick, to actually make a move happen. But in the end, he has to back out and say, look, I'm not going to take myself out of the race here. I'm P8. I might as well look up that place. And Magnussen as well, P10. So great performance from the Haas guys. Congrats to Mick Schumacher as well for locking up his first points. But there was, of course, some comments and kind of the post-race cool-down room effectively between Sainz, Hamilton. They were having a chat, and Sainz actually asked the question, are you back, right? Are Mercedes back in business? Because it felt like to the drivers as they out on track, the Mercedes were back in business and having the potential to compete for race wins again. Hamilton had a few words on this as well, saying that look, the Ferraris, the Red Bulls just a bit too quick on the straights, but Mercedes were quick in the high-speed corners and certainly were more competitive than they've been seen any time this year. So he certainly reckons there's more to come. They need to make some improvements and still some upgrades if they want to put themselves still back in a competitive position to actually win races on maybe a consistent basis. But certainly he seems to feel like it's there or thereabouts now, where he's back in the hunt for victories.
And I gave it everything today. I was trying to chase down those Ferraris, but congratulations to Carlos. They were just too quick today for us. And at the end, I was I was in amongst that battle with Checo. Those guys were just too quick on the straights for me today, but I'm so grateful for the hard work all the team did to get an upgrade here. We've made a step closer to them, so we've got to keep pushing. But the pace was great on both sets of tires, and at the end there, it was just a little bit difficult when once you get a Red Bull behind you, they're so fast on the straights. So we've got some improvements to make, but this is a huge bonus for us to be on the podium.
Is this a turning point in the season for you?
I like to think we're on the turning point. We're still on the bend, but big improvement from the car. We've still got work to do, but big thank you to all the team for all the upgrades this weekend. We need more. Naturally, we have to keep pushing. We have to stay positive, and yeah, it's great to be back in the fight. I'm so grateful to be back in the fight. Thanks to them.
It's great to see you there. Thanks a lot.
And also an impressive podium for Mercedes because, to a degree, they were there on pace, right? Because, I mean, look, previous races, they generally get podiums. It's because you've either got DNFs or, like, some serious issues, which, of course, was the case here for Verstappen. But in terms of pure pace, Hamilton and the Mercedes certainly earned the podium today. I know Leclerc finished behind them, right? Interesting tyre strategies, which, of course, could have meant that Hamilton actually missed out entirely on the podium, which looked likely after the safety car restart, to be honest, when he really couldn't get total kind of temperature into the tyres. That was an interesting one, that on the mediums and the hards, that Mercedes looked great, and on the soft tyres, they couldn't quite get the temperature in that they were looking for. So that was an interesting one, I'm sure, for them to dissect. One of the reasons I'm sure that Hamilton still says, look, we've got some improvement to make here. It's not not done and dusted. We can't just compete for race wins, because look, Silverstone in theory should have been a great circuit for Mercedes, as indeed it was. But like, look, if they lose a couple of tenths, few tenths or whatever on circuits that don't suit them quite so well, the W13 does seem to be a tricky beast. Then all of a sudden you're thinking, okay, Mercedes actually might not be as competitive as they appeared this weekend. They're making upgrades. Of course, other teams are making upgrades as well. But like, the bouncing seemed to pretty much be solved this weekend, especially in terms of race trim. So it's an exciting prospect for the competition for the remainder of this season. Just to mention this, a remarkable statistic as well. 13 podium finishes now at Silverstone for Lewis Hamilton, the highest of any driver at any Formula 1 racetrack. 10 podium finishes in a row. Just so ridiculous. Like, I mean, yeah, look, we know this guy around Silverstone is unbelievable. And he did it again today in the car. Who knows if other tracks that don't look quite so competitive, right? I think Hamilton was certainly a part of why the car looked great today. But give it another couple of races and maybe more progress, and who knows what Mercedes, how exactly they could be fighting for the rest of the year. Let's talk then classification. Sainz wins the race. Like, I mean, yeah, Leclerc probably on another day wins it. Perez P2 after the safety car restart, gets blessed massively with that. Hamilton again, like, unlucky really with this. The bad pit stop. What happened at the start of the race? Getting P3, getting put back to P5, and then at the end with the safety car, if he hadn't have had that, I'd say, he'd have been at least P3, if not better than that. More than likely P2 or P1. Credit to Latifi, put up a good fight, ends up P12 here. Riccardo with another tough day. Norris P6. Definitely, I think, some interesting decision to McLaren that Alonso get past, but P5 for Alonso, well deserved. Verstappen holds off Schumacher at the end of the battle that they had for P7. So like, honestly, not that bad at the end of the day, losing very little ground to Leclerc in terms of the championship fight. And Vettel P9 as well, which I believe now means that he actually moves above Daniel Ricciardo in the Drivers' Championship, which is quite the remarkable statistic. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new as always, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.